Greetings and salutations. Warner Brothers recently announced a plan for DC Universe films that goes until 2020. 10 films. This comes after Disney announced their plans for Marvel films that goes until an incredible 2028. With 2 films a year, that's 28 new Marvel films that are going to be coming out. This, coupled with all the television shows being made for both DC and Marvel, it's hard to imagine a time when comic books were seen as bad. But not too long ago, that was the case in this country. Geeks were picked on for liking comic books. Authority figures saw them as a sign of delinquency and a waste of time. But why was that? And what changed? This episode, I head back to Jeffy's to see if I can figure it out. Why do you think that it's more widely accepted in other countries than it is in America?
I think a lot of it stems from Wertheim's Seduction of the Innocent, that really tainted the waters on comic appreciation.
Seduction of the Innocent was a book written in 1954 by Frederick Wertheim. It cataloged the immoral writings of comic books, or well, at least it appeared to. It came out many years later that his information was either exaggerated or downright falsified. But this didn't stop it from being a minor bestseller and leading to the establishment of the Comics Code Authority, which remained in practice until the 21st century.
I think people, when comics came out initially, they were more of like a television. They were like a bunch of sensational stories about adventures that wouldn't apply to the academics of the time. Then television came in, and I think comics just managed to get marginalized. I think there's just some obstinacy in our culture to like accepting things for the way that they really are. That's my feeling, that there's just a little bit of resistance because again, people think of comic books, think of them sometimes with blinders. When they think comic book, they think superhero comics, and those are great. Yeah. But there's other ways, there's other stories out there too. There's a whole spectrum. There's romance, there's true life, there's biography. For whatever reason, there just seems to be, and it could just be that it's an easy bullet point to say. It could be just because it's easy to say comics. That's all they need, just something to throw out there to deride it because it's easier to deride than to investigate.
Interesting.
It's always been inclusive, but it's always been hidden and kind of in the dark and kind of something where people went, we don't want to go ahead and be a part of that because of the backlash. There is no backlash now. If you're not a fan, you're the uncool kid. If you're on the football team and you go, oh, those Avengers movies are terrible, you're the one that's going to get thrown in the locker with soap because of the fact that how much this has become such a part of pop culture.
Now, do you have any ideas or theories as to why now? Why are comic book and superheroes really being taken from the outside and becoming the inside?
It's just a generational thing. It's one of those things where the base keeps growing and growing and growing. You have people that started collecting comics in the 50s that end up having kids that then pushed it to their kids who were reading the Stan Lee stuff in the 60s and the 70s. And then they pushed it to their kids who were reading Frank Miller and Alan Moore's Batman and the different things. Then you go to the 90s where you have Jim Lee's X-Men, and that's where everyone started to go ahead and follow. You just keep having this generational push and push and push. You can see now where it doesn't matter. We're the cool kids. We're the ones that are having fun. We're the ones that are dressing up as our favorite characters. We're the ones that are coming out here spending money and being able to go ahead and have this sense of community that's always kind of been something we all want.
Cosplay is far from something that recently came into fashion. It dates all the way back to Forrest J. Ackerman, who in 1939 came to the World Science Fiction Convention in costume. People have been dressing up ever since. Is there a correlation between being able to see yourself in these characters enough that you want to dress up as them and the reflection that the comics are really that good of a representation of the mindset nowadays?
I think it's a good representation of that mindset. And also, this is a group of people that are, you know, cosplayers. They see an interesting design and they want to mimic it. It's not always about the character being them. A lot of times it is, because there's a lot of time invested in this. But it's about, this is something that I can present myself as. And for many people, putting on a costume changes their whole perspective on themselves and gives them greater freedom emotionally, personally, and it can also give them a lot of positive feedback, because if you walk down the street wearing a nice suit, you might hear, that looks nice every once in a while, but if you're dressed up as a really cool Batman, you're gonna hear that, wow, awesome Batman, Batman, and a lot of affirmation. A lot of times people look at these things as being childish behaviors, but as they get older and our community and our way of thinking is more allowable, you know, we don't have to dress up a certain way, we're allowed to be more free to be me. People are seeing this and they're going with like, you know, this isn't something that's just reserved for youngins and Halloween. This is something that I enjoy. Let's make it a part of my life.
History lessons are taught through boring textbooks, right? But what if they were taught through comics? Next episode, I talk to an author who does just that. See you then.